501, call the special meeting of Wyomissing Borough Council to order. And may we have pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brenner?
Here.
Councilmember Jarrett?
Here.
Councilmember Barnett?
Here.
Councilmember Noble?
Here.
Councilmember Stanko is absent. Council First Vice President Jenks.
Here. Okay. And are there any public comments?
We're going to, or I will ask for public comment after the testimony is completed. It's on our agenda, at item number 8 for today's meeting. So that will be the time for public comment.
Okay, this time I'll pass it over to the Borough Solicitor, Mr. Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Jenks. This is the time and place which has been advertised by published notice, posted notice, and mailed notice of a conditional use hearing for the property located at 1011 North Park Road in the borough. The owner of that property and applicant for today's hearing is JMRPI LP. The subject of today's hearing is zoning approval for a mixed-use development which will include apartments and office use. Under the borough's redevelopment regulations in the zoning ordinance, second floor apartments in a mixed-use project are permitted by right. However, for apartments to be on the ground floor, a conditional use approval by Borough Council is required. So that is one of the topics that the Borough Council will need to consider today. The second aspect that is under consideration is whether or not the project as proposed will comply with certain additional regulations in the redevelopment section of the ordinance, and if there is any deviation from those requirements, the borough needs to approve that by conditional use also. So those are the two issues which are the subject of today's hearing, and those fall under section 502.D.3 and 504.D.1. First, I want to introduce the council who will be the deciders of today's conditional use hearing. We have presiding First Vice President William Jenks, also present Second Vice President Stephen Bruner, Councilperson Janet Barnett, Councilperson Fred Mogul, Councilperson Ron Stanko is absent, I see, and Councilperson Keith Durr is present. So that means we have 5 council members present, so it'll take 3 of the 5 councilmen, at least councilpersons, to decide the hearing today. In addition, I am here, the Solicitor Christopher Hartman, Borough Manager and Zoning Officer for Commercial Uses, Michelle Baer, and also Melissa Miller, the Borough Secretary. So at this time, I'm going to turn over the hearing to Attorney Andy George to present testimony through his witness, who is Mr. Jim McCarthy. After that, we will hear testimony from Michelle Baer in her capacity as zoning officer for commercial uses. She will bring into the record administrative exhibits regarding the notices and affidavits that are required to prove that we have a valid hearing today, and also any other exhibits that aren't already covered by the testimony of Mr. McCarthy. For the record, I want to indicate that the applicant, JMR PILP, is associated with Mr. Jim McCarthy, who through McCarthy Engineering serves as the borough engineer, but the Borough Council previously appointed conflict engineering services for this project. So Jim McCarthy and McCarthy Engineering have no connection with the review of this project for the borough in any aspect. Before we proceed any further, I want to get our parties recognized. Mr. George, would you enter your appearance on behalf of your applicant?
Sure, thank
Client?
you. Yes, Andrew S. George, Kozlov Stout, 2640 Westview Drive, Wyomissing, PA.
And then further, I want to turn to the audience and ask if there's any person present who wishes to be a party to this matter. In order to be recognized as a party, you have to be an aggrieved party, meaning you have some direct interest in the subject matter of the application. If you are recognized as a party, you would have the right to cross-examine the applicant and applicant's witnesses. You'd also have the right to present testimony. Is there any person present who wishes to be recognized as a party today to this hearing other than the applicant? I see no indication of that from the audience. There will be an opportunity later in the agenda for public comment for persons who are present who have not requested to be recognized as parties. With that introduction, I'll turn to Mr. George.
Thank you, Chris. We'll try to move through this as efficiently as possible, but we do have to hit some high points in the ordinance.
Well, before we go further, Mr. George, I failed to recognize the mayor, Mr. Fred Levering. I omitted Mr. Levering because he is not going to be a decider. Council will be the deciders on this application, but I don't want to fail to recognize the mayor for being present.
If one of the deciders dies, then I would break.
You could do that. Thank you. All right, I apologize, Mr. George. Please proceed.
So we only have one witness, it's Mr. McCarthy, so we might as well just get right to it and have him sworn in.
Yeah, let's have Mr. McCarthy sworn and also Michelle Bear, who will be testifying later. We'll have them both sworn at the same time.
I always think.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you.
All right, so the applicant is JMRP1 LP. Is that a Pennsylvania limited partnership?
Yes, it is.
And who or what is the general partner of that limited partnership?
JMRP Management LLC is the general partner of that limited partnership, and James C. McCarthy is the sole member of that LLC.
Okay. And the LP is the owner of 1011 North Park Road, Wyomissing, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you had a deed which is marked as applicant's exhibit 1, dated July 1st, 2021, is that correct?
That's the day we purchased the property.
And the property consists of approximately 2.19 acres.
Correct.
And what is on the property currently?
Currently, there's approximately a 17,800 square foot office building, warehouse, and 2 garage door bays. It's currently being used by Stratix Systems. They have their corporate headquarters there, and their IT division, their warehousing, distribution, and repair center.
And the property is located in the C2, which is retail commercial zoning district.
That's correct.
And is the property also in the redevelopment area 3?
Yes, it's in RAMU RD3. It's identified in the zoning ordinance for redevelopment area 3.
And that's the overlay district that we're talking about today.
Correct.
So in addition to the building on the property, is there also a driveway and parking areas?
Yes.
Okay.
Driveway, parking areas, loading docks.
So the reason we're here, you want to explain that, what you want to do at the property?
Sure. Well, this ultimately, when Stratix moves out of this property, McCarthy Engineering will be leasing approximately 10,400 square feet of the office from JMRP. When we originally purchased the building, we thought we could convert and lease the back area, its warehouse and office, But in that time, there's no office market in Wyoming or Pennsylvania or probably most of the United States with teleworking. So we knew that the overlay district existed, so we consulted architects and had them do some floor planning for us to put second floor apartments on. Actually, we were looking to do 3 floors of apartments, but the existing foundations wouldn't support that. So that's why we're looking at apartments above, which are by right under the overlay district, but to take roughly the 7,000 square feet in the rear of the first floor building and convert those to apartments, that would require the conditional use that we're here for today. And what we're looking to do in that area is to have, we currently show 5, we still haven't worked out the exact number on really either floor. We show 5 apartments on the first floor, a fitness center, there we go. The gray area, it's not exactly right. Most of the gray area would be what McCarthy Engineering would be leasing. A small portion of it actually belongs with the apartments for the rental office, the mail drop, and facilities, cleaning, janitorial services. But on that floor, we would install an elevator, 2 stair towers, and the Carter. And currently, we show 5 apartments and a fitness center in the rear of the building.
That's what we show as Exhibit 6. How about on the second floor, what do you have proposed for that?
So currently on the second floor, we have 16 proposed units up there. It's a mix of 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom units, mostly 2-bedroom. You'll see some labeled 1-bedroom with office. That's because in the building code, it doesn't have a window, you have to call it a den or an office instead of a bedroom, but for all intents and purposes, it's used as a 2-bedroom for most people. 2 external stair towers for fire and ingress egress. The elevator installed in that area for handicap accessibility. We're looking to eliminate the loading dock feel of the property, but we still want to retain that area as a dock, so when people move in and out, they can move in and out easier, unloading, move, and trust them all, having that instead of dealing with ramps. But we want to clean up the area of the loading dock and not make it look like it does now as a warehouse.
And why do you think it would be a good idea to locate apartments on the first floor? I guess the follow-up question to that is, why doesn't the ordinance allow for that?
Okay, well, I mean, logically, for the existing layout of the building, in order for us to get the interconnection between the stair towers and to have the elevator core and all meet code, it really ends up, it would be a very odd layout where we would have apartment tenants on the second floor coming through common corridors with a office space behind them if we had, the way we had to cut the building up. So in new construction, you could plan for that. Being that we're dealing with an existing building, it doesn't really lend itself to having the apartments on the upper floor and not having the apartments in the rear lower level where the elevator core has to be located by code for the egress paths, plus the location. Fire towers have to be situated so far from each apartment for life safety issues in the building code.
Okay.
Do you want to answer the second part now?
Sure.
I think what the intent of the ordinance was that we didn't want to, the borough didn't want to look at just apartment buildings and give up the commercial, retail and office uses in these C2 corridors and C1 corridors that were subject to the 3 overlays. And I think we're basically achieving that here, because when you drive, from the street view, it will look like offices on the first floor with residential above, and it's really a relatively small portion of the rear of the building that's going to be used for apartments should we be successful in obtaining conditional use. So I think it meets the spirit of the regulation, perhaps not the letter of the regulation.
Thank you. Just switching gears, you're also asking for relief from section 504D1 of the ordinance, which is a requirement that benches be located between trees along Park Road. Why are you requesting relief for that requirement?
Well, there's 2 things with that. There's the benches, and there's also supposed to be a bike rack. We are planning to put a bike rack by our entrance for our tenants to use that may want to bike, because this site is only 1 property away from the official bike route through the borough of Wyomissing that connects the bike routes to the trail network. So we envision our tenants using that having bikes are using the trail network and bike network. So we'd like to actually place that on our property for our tenants to use. Same thing with benches. We don't show them on the plan, but we're gonna have some picnic rows and things in the back. We wanna kind of keep that for our tenants. I don't want to disparage another property, but let's just say the property across Park Road to the north of us, I don't know that we want some of the clientele there sitting on benches hanging out in front of our office building or our apartment building, or promote that at this time. Maybe when they redevelop that and they clean that up like the rest of Park Road, it's nice. And we would certainly, if that's something the borough wanted down the road, when that was done, I'd have no problem doing it, but I don't want to invite that to sitting on our side of the street.
Do you believe that the proposed use fits into the borough's comprehensive plan and also into the goals and objectives of the overlay district?
Yes.
Will the proposed use adversely affect the character of the neighborhood or property values?
I don't think it would affect the character of the neighborhood at all, because to the south and the east, we already have the Wynwood apartment building complex. We have, and a professional office, which are up and down the whole entire corridor. And, I mean, the property was purchased for $2.2 million roughly, and this is a $4 million project to do these renovations. So I think a $6 million investment in the corridor is certainly going to enhance property values around us, not negatively impact them.
Is there any adverse effect on the safety or health of residents or workers on adjacent properties?
No, there should be no negative impact in any way, shape, or form. In fact, along Wynwood, we've actually are removing some impervious to landscape those areas a little nicer. We plan on even the other landscape areas that aren't our landscape, but maybe weren't maintained the last decade or so. We want to clean all that up and basically give it a fresh landscaped appearance with new parking lot lighting. Parking lot will all be overlaid when we're done. There's trees along Park Road. We're actually adding some more along there, shown on our landscape plan. I think it'll be an enhancement to the neighboring properties and property values of the area.
How about any access issues, vehicular or pedestrian?
Right now the property has sidewalk along the full frontage, and along our northern driveway, there's handicap accessible to the entrances along the north side of the building. The driveways all are existing. They meet the borough code for one-way and two-way traffic. The southern driveway would be one-way. It's currently two-way. We're gonna make it one-way because it's really not wide enough, and we want it safe for our employees and our tenants.
Plenty of room for emergency vehicles?
Yes.
Any issues anticipated with water, sewer, or stormwater management?
Stormwater, there's a decrease in impervious coverage because we're removing paving and adding landscaping. I've checked with Dave Whistler at the Joint Municipal Authority, there's capacity to treat this. I've checked with Jim Babb on water and sewer, and there's water and sewer capacity from the borough to treat this. We have to obtain our sewers planning module exemption prior to starting any construction for any additional EUs we may need that aren't already assigned to the building.
Are you familiar with the master plan, which is attached as our Exhibit 8, which is dated January 21st, 2020?
Yes.
And as part of Section 502(e)(3) of the zoning ordinance, an applicant is required to submit a current market analysis during a conditional use proceeding. Is that master plan, in fact, that analysis?
Yes.
And how so?
That plan was commissioned by the borough as a result of the Drexel Tower Medical Campus to analyze the surrounding area of the borough to determine short, medium, and long-term needs. And as a result of that study, it was determined that there's a significant need in the surrounding area for multifamily housing, as apartments, condominiums, and townhouses.
Okay. And have you attempted to rent out your building to commercial tenants? And can you describe if you've had any issues with that?
Yeah, so settlement on this was actually delayed a year and a half because Brent Simone's deal with Jeff Hedinger hit a roadblock and was delayed. So we actually were supposed to close on this property a year and a half before we did. during that time, I had Kyle McCarthyEng from NAI Keystone, not actively listing it, but in his pocket of anybody looking for 8,000 to 9,000 square feet along Park Road of office or even like a office with some type of service in the back like Stratix does, and we had no interest whatsoever. So we haven't officially listed it, well, one, because Stratix is still in there, but we've had no interest in not to, NAI is probably one of the largest commercial office, brokerage houses in the county, square footage wise, so, and they've had zero interest.
And has this proposal been reviewed by and approved by, or recommended for approval by the borough's Economic Development Committee and also the Borough Planning Commission?
Yes, they both recommended approval.
I don't have any questions at this time.
All right, I just want to confirm the plans that are in the exhibit packet that has been distributed to council, were those all prepared by you or on your behalf to represent the existing conditions and proposed improvements to the property?
Yes, the site plan and land development waiver request plan was prepared by McCarthy Engineering. The landscape plan was prepared by Architerra from Coopersburg, and then any of the architectural floor plans or concept elevations were all done by Meister Cox, the children.
And it's your intention to develop the property if conditional use is granted in accordance with those plans?
Yes, the only thing I would say is the floor plans are conceptual, so the size, shape, unit, that may change, but generally, we are looking to develop it in accordance with.
Or would it be fair to say substantially in compliance with the plans that have been?
Yes, correct.
All right, thank you. Does council have any questions for Mr. McCarthy? Go ahead, if any member of council is gonna ask for a question, would you please identify yourself so the stenographer can keep track of who's speaking? Thank you.
I'm Jana Barnett. I have a few questions. Jim, at the planning commission meeting, we had a recommended conflict engineer present, and we reviewed his letter, recommendation. And my recollection was that he had a few conditions. And my recollection is also that you stated that you would meet those conditions. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep, any of the conditions that were in that great data letter, we had agreed to at that time.
And when I moved that the planning commission approved your application, it was on condition that those conditions be satisfied, which was approved to you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from council?
I do, Steve Burner. Jim, I assume that by reducing the amount of impervious space, you're feeling that the traffic, the parking situation will be lighter than it is today?
Yes, actually, we have a lot more, even though we're reducing the parking that's there, we have 30-some spaces still left over what we need. And the big thing is that we're not gonna have any truck deliveries other than a tenant moving in and out. We're not doing month, this is year minimum leases. So we'd have a moving truck coming in when the tenant was moving in or out. As opposed to, Stratix is getting tractor trailer truck deliveries of their large format and their copier, the multifunction copiers, and then storing them and then shipping them out in box trucks. So we're dealing with the tenants having, cars, and maybe an F-150 pickup or something like that. And McCarthy Engineering, we have the biggest vehicle we have is an F-150. So we're getting rid of all those larger vehicles. And Stratix has 90 employees in there. McCarthy we'll have about 28 in here plus the tenants. So I think even if I was testifying as an engineer, not a building owner, I'd say the IT manual has less traffic than, for the proposed building than the existing building by their counts.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? All right, Mr. McCarthy, until the hearing is complete, I ask you to continue to be available for any questions that might come up, and that your oath will continue to be in effect. He's acknowledged.
Yes.
And now I'd like to turn to our Borough Manager, Michelle Baer, in her capacity as zoning officer for commercial uses and ask you if you could enter into the record some administrative exhibits and then supplement the record with any additional exhibits that you might have that weren't already covered by Mr. McCarthy's testimony, and then also to give your thoughts on this application to council. Thank you.
So in my duties as the commercial zoning officer and in reviewing the application submitted by the applicant, I prepared a memo dated May 19th of 2022, which is addressed to Borough Council that summarizes the application and relief that's being requested. That was provided to all council members in advance of the hearing and has also already been provided to the stenographer as one of the borough's exhibits. As the zoning hearing board secretary under normal conditions, I did the same thing for this hearing that I would do for any zoning hearing, which is prepare a public notice. That public notice, hold on a second, was advertised in the Reading Eagle on May 24th and May 31st of 2022. That same public notice was posted on the subject property on May 19th of 2022 at approximately 8 a.m. and was mailed to all adjacent property owners within at least 350 feet on May 17th of 2022 at approximately 8:30 a.m. I have copies of that public notice, an affidavit of posting signed by Jim Babb, the borough's public works director, and a copy of the mailing to adjacent property owners with a copy of the label list that notice was sent to, signed by myself, that I would also enter as an exhibit. And then the application submitted by the applicant along with his cover letter dated April 13th of 2022. A copy of the deed, conceptual floor plans, which I believe the applicant's already submitted, but I will still include as part of my exhibit as it was part of the submitted application. As the borough's commercial zoning officer, I would strongly support granting the conditional use approval in that I agree with Mr. McCarthy's statement that the project meets the intention of the overlay district, if not specifically meeting all of the letter of the law.
Okay, thank you. Does council have any questions for Michelle Bear?
Yes, I do. Fred Mogul, just to be clear, your opinion, Michelle, also includes the variance requests. You would agree with those as well?
There is no variance.
Well, the variance for the bench requirement,
Well, the conditional use approval for the bench requirement, yes,
it's the same,
Yes.
same thing in my head. 504.D.1
correct,
and 502.D.3 with the market analysis.
yes.
And would you also agree that the conditions in the Great Valley letter be made part of the land conditional use if it were being approved?
Yeah, I would suggest that be a condition of approval, yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Michelle Bear?
I would just move for the admission of the applicant's exhibits 1 through 8.
I would recommend a motion by council to accept the applicant's exhibits and also the exhibits that were asked by Michelle Bear.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so be it.
Right, at this point, I'd recommend that council close the record for the hearing, and if that's acceptable to council, then the next thing would be to consider whether you're prepared to make a decision. You have the right to have an executive session to deliberate on the testimony and ask any legal questions that you may have. If you don't feel that you need an executive session for that deliberation and discussion, then it would be permissible for council to consider a motion with regard to the application.
Public
I
comment?
understood your
Public
public
comment.
comment.
Oh, yeah, thank you, good point. I should look at our agenda.
Deliberate, that's what you said.
Yes, okay. So, is there any public comment on the application which has been the subject of this hearing? Okay, can you identify yourself, sir?
Yes, Adrian Jadick, 48 Cardinal Road, why missing? So I have some concerns. Personally, I think everyone should have a bit of concerns right here. And the concerns lie with possible, and I'm saying possible, ethics or conflict of interest violations, whether they're obvious, visible, provable, or right now, in the present, or in the future. What happens is Mr. McCarthy has a very special relationship with the borough. His firm he is actually the borough engineer, so technically he's an employee. And due to, you know, the workings, his fees are not even subject to bidding or, you know, to reviews. So we have seen in the past projects that have rolled over and over. Anyway, bottom line, and I brought this before, he receives around $500,000 per year. This is at least the past 2 years, what the records have shown. Not only that, but we could have seen in the past election, McCarthy Engineering was displaying yard signs for Mr. Jenks. So there are questions of Mr. McCarthy right now becoming a major developer in Wyomissing. I'm wondering about unfair competition, about, like, I'm sure you would comment if Kevin Timochenko would all of a sudden become, you know, a freelance borough employee, you know, with a highly paid salary of the likes of $500,000 per year. So I think there are a lot of questions. Just this meeting that, you know, we're going out of the way to grant all sorts of things. Again, Mr. McCarthy also will and has and will always have inside information that other developers don't have of the borough. So, like I said, I'm not making any accusations. I think I'm raising some obvious questions here. That I think we're crossing a line going this route. I think there is a certain limit of decency or I shouldn't say, I'm sorry, I apologize, of ethics that we should maintain when we have such a relationship with a contractor and then giving such special privileges. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Jadick. I think you arrived perhaps after we had begun the proceedings. I'm not sure if you were here when I made my statement at the beginning of the hearing that Mr. McCarthy is not serving in any role as a reviewer or advisor to the borough. Did you hear that, Mr. Jadick?
I did hear that, and I understand that for the purpose of this particular transaction is not. But what my concern was, how will this affect future situations? What position does he have as becoming the major developer in the borough? So I understand that you took some measures, and I wanted to talk about that, but I forgot. They seem a little bit superficial, I understand, and it makes sense that for the purpose of this particular transaction, some other engineer was hired, but this is not where I was going with my comment. I understand, naturally I appreciate it, that this was done, but I think it's a little bit too little. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? At this point, I would recommend that we move on to consideration of a decision in this matter. And again, I will offer to council the opportunity for an executive session if it wishes. If not, then it is possible to consider a motion with regard to the application. Under the borough zoning ordinance, the borough needs to make a decision within 45 days of the hearing. So that means that anytime within the next 45 days, borough council must make a decision on this matter. And then after that decision is made, a written decision must also be presented to the applicant.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use application with the waiver of the bench requirement and with the conditions set forth in the Great Valley letter.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The conditional use is approved.
All right, thank you. So with that decision, I will follow up with a written version for council's consideration, which will then be delivered to the applicant. Does the applicant or does council have any questions?
Just to clarify, did that also include the bike rack?
Well, he
You
wasn't
mentioned the
waiving,
bench,
he wasn't waiving the bike rack. He was gonna have
To
a
put
bike.
it out
Put
on
on
the
the
street.
street.
it's required to be on the street, and we were
Yes,
asking them.
yes.
All right. So my understanding is that the application is granted, which would include having no requirement for a street bench or street bike rack, as would be literally required by the regulations.
For permitting the first floor.
Right.
Okay, any other questions?
No.
All right. Thank you very much. That concludes our conditional use hearing.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Welcome to town.
Thanks for your succinct presentation.
Congratulations on being able to.
10 minutes too late.
30 minutes. It's long-winded.
At this time, request that council members stay for an executive session regarding personnel issues.
Not related to
Pardon?
Yeah, not related to this.
No, not related to this. So, this meeting is officially adjourned.
You? Did Lori send them to you? I sent them.
It's not too